Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
The endless void outside the horizon was anything but silent. Among the static hum of background radiation, something whispered, a faint, desperate cry cutting through the darkness of space. "Captain Hale, you need to hear this." Lieutenant Cara Malloy's voice was sharp, her usual calm replaced by something bordering on urgency. Ryan Hale strode onto the bridge, his boots echoing across the sleek floor. As the lead biologist and newly minted diplomat, he had faced plenty of alien oddities, but the tension on his crew's faces suggested this was different. "Play it," he ordered. The speakers crackled, and then it came, a haunting transmission in a language unlike any Ryan had heard. It wasn't just words. It was a melody, a blend of desperation and reverence. The ship's AI worked feverishly, translating fragmented phrases. "Salvation, our lifeblood. Outsiders, save us." "What's the source?" Ryan asked, narrowing his eyes. Lieutenant Malloy pointed to a swirling holographic display. "Uncharted system. A planet called Vrath. Barely habitable. Atmospheric scans indicate high toxicity. But there's something down there, Captain. Something advanced. Why send a distress signal from a wasteland?" Ryan muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Dr. Elias Grant, the ship's xenobiologist, glanced over his data pad. Advanced civilizations don't just choose to live on dying planets. Either they're trapped, or something catastrophic happened. Ryan's gaze lingered on the image of Vrath, a scarred, desolate world wreathed in swirling storms. "Whatever it is, we'll find out. Prep the shuttle." The shuttle hurtled toward Vrath, buffeted by violent winds that howled like the cries of ghosts. Ryan gripped the console, watching as the surface came into view. Jagged cliffs, rivers of cooled lava, and ruins shrouded in ash. The planet's lifelessness seemed to reach out, clawing at their vessel. "Life signs," Ryan barked, his voice cutting through the turbulence. "Faint, but concentrated around a central structure," Malloy replied. "It's massive, likely ceremonial or governmental." The shuttle landed with a jarring thud, its landing struts sinking slightly into the ashen ground. Ryan and his team stepped out into a world that felt like death itself. The air was heavy, tinted with a metallic tang, and the wind carried an eerie, low wail. Ahead, a towering obsidian structure rose like a monolith, its surface shimmering faintly with shifting glyphs. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Dr. Grant, his hand resting on the sidearm at his belt. "Stay sharp," Ryan said, his voice steady despite the unease curling in his gut. As they approached the structure, the glyphs brightened, casting an otherworldly glow across their faces. The massive doors creaked open, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, golden light. A figure emerged, her presence striking and surreal. She was tall, her skin a deep, shimmering lavender that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Her eyes were large and liquid gold, her features elegant yet unearthly. She wore a flowing garment of translucent material that seemed to defy gravity, and her movements were graceful, almost hypnotic. "You have come." Her voice was a symphony, each word resonating with both power and sorrow. Ryan stepped forward, his instincts as both a scientist and a diplomat taking over. "I'm Captain Ryan Hale of the Horizon. We received your signal. Are you the one who sent it?" "I am Sylvana," she said, inclining her head. "High Priestess of the Valyrians. And yes, it was I who called to you, the last hope of my people." Her words hung in the air like a weight. Ryan's pulse quickened, a mix of curiosity and dread swirling within him. "Last hope? What happened here?" Sylvana's gaze seemed to pierce through him, her golden eyes flickering with something he couldn't quite name. Despair, reverence, or perhaps both. "Our world is dying. Our people are dying. And you, outsider, hold the key to our salvation." Ryan's breath caught. There was a pleading in her tone, a desperation that made his skin crawl. He glanced back at his team, their expressions mirroring his own unease. "Explain," he said, his voice firm despite the growing tension. Sylvana stepped closer, the glow of her markings intensifying. I will. But first, Captain Hale, you must understand this. Your very essence, your sacred essence, may be all that stands between us and extinction. Her cryptic words sent a chill down Ryan's spine. He had no idea what she meant, but one thing was clear. This mission had just become far more complicated. The chambers stretched endlessly before them, the golden light illuminating intricate carvings on the walls. They depicted scenes of towering valyrians, their ethereal forms woven into constellations, performing rituals that seemed almost otherworldly. The air inside the temple was thick with an unidentifiable fragrance, a mix of ozone and blooming flowers, though none grew here. Ryan's steps echoed as he followed Sylvana deeper into the temple. The rest of the team trailed behind, their movements hesitant but alert. His mind raced, replaying her words. Your very essence may be all that stands between us and extinction. What is this place? Ryan asked, his voice breaking the silence. Sylvana glanced over her shoulder, her golden eyes catching the faint light. This is the Hall of Ascension. It is where we once celebrated life and renewal, long before the stars turned their backs on us. The cryptic response only heightened Ryan's unease. He glanced at Dr. Grant, who subtly shrugged, equally baffled. As they rounded a corner, the space opened into a vast hall. Dozens of valyrians stood waiting, their lavender skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Unlike Sylvana, their forms were more muted, their expressions weary. Many appeared frail, their bioluminescent markings dim and flickering. Sylvana raised her arms, and the gathering fell silent. My people, she began, her voice resonating through the hall. The outsider has come. He carries the potential to save us from oblivion. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ryan felt the weight of their collective gaze, a mix of hope and desperation etched into their features. This outsider, Ryan said, stepping forward, is willing to listen, but I need answers. What exactly is happening here? And what do you mean by my essence? Sylvana nodded solemnly. You deserve the truth, Captain Hale. She gestured for him to follow her to a raised dais at the center of the hall. As they ascended, a holographic display materialized, projecting the history of the Valyrians in vivid detail. Our people, Sylvana began, her voice steady but tinged with sorrow, were once among the galaxy's most advanced. We thrived for millennia, our mastery of genetic engineering unmatched. But in our hubris, we sought to perfect ourselves. The hologram showed images of Valyrians manipulating their DNA, eradicating diseases, enhancing their abilities, and extending their lifespans. For a time, it was paradise. But perfection comes at a price, Sylvana continued. Over generations, our genetic diversity dwindled. What we thought was progress became our undoing. Reproduction slowed, then ceased altogether. Our lifeblood faded. Ryan stared at the display, captivated by the rise and fall of their civilization. And now, Sylvana said, turning to face him, we are at the brink of extinction. Our population has dwindled to less than 1,000. The youngest among us is over a century old. Without intervention, the Valyrians will vanish. Where do I come in? Ryan asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Sylvana hesitated, her regal composure faltering for the first time. Our studies of other species revealed an anomaly in humans. Your genetic material is uniquely robust. It adapts, survives, and evolves in ways ours cannot. Ryan's heart raced as the implications hit him. You need my DNA. Sylvana stepped closer, her gaze locking onto his. More than that, our reproductive systems are incompatible with most species, but we discovered that humans are different. To renew our lifeblood, we require a direct, intimate exchange. The room seemed to shrink around Ryan. His team's eyes were on him, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and concern. You're asking me to, he struggled to find the words. Sylvana interrupted gently. To give yourself to the survival of an entire species, Captain Hale. Not just physically, but spiritually. Among my people, reproduction is sacred, a bond that transcends mere biology. It is an honor. Ryan took a step back, the weight of her words pressing down on him. This is the lot to process. I understand your hesitation, Sylvana said, her tone softening. But consider this. Without your help, we are doomed. Our culture, our knowledge, our very existence will be lost to the void. The hall was silent, every Valyrian present hanging on Ryan's response. He felt the crushing burden of their hope and desperation. He needed time, but he also knew time was the one thing the Valyrians didn't have. I'll consider it, he said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. But I need to understand more. Your biology, the process, the risks. Sylvana inclined her head. Of course, I will show you everything you need to know. And should you choose to help us, you will be remembered as the savior of our people. Her words lingered as the gathering dispersed, leaving Ryan and his team alone in the vast hall. He turned to Dr. Grant, who looked as overwhelmed as he felt. Well, Grant said, breaking the silence, this mission just got a hell of a lot more complicated. Ryan sighed. You're not kidding. The glow of the temple dimmed as the Valyrians departed, their faint bioluminescence receding into the shadows like embers, fading into the night. Ryan stood in the center of the chamber, his thoughts churning. Sylvana lingered nearby, her elegant form a stark contrast to the desolate ruins around them. Captain Hale, she began softly, breaking the silence. I sense your hesitation. It is natural. What we ask of you is extraordinary. That's one way to put it, Ryan muttered, pinching the bridge of his nose. You're asking me to save your species with my body. Forgive me if I need a moment to wrap my head around that. Sylvana stepped closer, her expression a mixture of compassion and urgency. I do not mean to diminish your unease, but understand this. We have exhausted every alternative. Our technology, our knowledge, our very existence, all of it has led us here, to this moment, to you. Ryan held her gaze, searching for any sign of manipulation or deceit. Instead, he found sincerity, an unyielding belief that this was their only hope. I need more information, Ryan said finally. You said humans are biologically compatible, but I need details. How does this process work? And why me? Sylvana nodded, gesturing for him to follow. Come, I will show you. The inner sanctum of the temple was unlike anything Ryan had seen before. Rows of crystalline chambers lined the walls, each containing shimmering strands of genetic material suspended in a golden liquid. The air hummed with energy, and the faint scent of ozone lingered, as if the room itself was alive. This is the genetic vault, Sylvana explained, her voice reverent. Here lies the essence of every Valyrian who has ever lived. Their knowledge, their memories, their potential, all stored for the future we once thought assured. Ryan approached one of the chambers, peering at the delicate threads within. And now it's useless. Sylvana's shoulders sagged. Our genetic code has become too degraded to sustain life. We can no longer conceive naturally, and even our most advanced artificial methods have failed. But your kind represents a miracle. Ryan turned to her, his skepticism rising again. How exactly? Sylvana activated a holographic display, showing complex molecular diagrams. Your DNA exhibits unparalleled adaptability. It bridges gaps, heals flaws, and integrates seamlessly with alien genomes. In short, it can restore what we have lost. And the process? Ryan asked, folding his arms. Sylvana hesitated, her golden eyes flickering. It is intimate. A direct physical exchange is necessary to facilitate the bioneural connection. Our reproductive biology is entwined with our spiritual essence. Through this bond, we not only create life, but also share our memories, our emotions, our very souls. Ryan's pulse quickened. You're saying this isn't just biology. It's something more. Yes, Sylvana said, her voice soft. To us, it is sacred. That is why I ask you not as a demand, but as a plea. If you choose to help us, you will not only save our species, but become a part of it. forever. Later, back aboard the Horizon, Ryan sat alone in his quarters. The sterile walls of the ship felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the ancient beauty of Vrath. He stared at the holographic report on his desk, detailing the Valyrian's plight in cold, clinical terms. "Captain," Kara's voice came through the comm. "Yeah," Ryan replied, not bothering to hide the weariness in his tone. "We're all wondering, what's the plan? Are you really going to go through with this?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Kara. This is unprecedented. You don't have to decide alone," Kara said gently. "We're your crew. We've got your back, no matter what." Ryan smiled faintly. "Thanks, Kara. I'll let you know." He ended the call and leaned forward, his head in his hands. The weight of the decision was crushing. If he said yes, he would be crossing a line that no human had ever crossed. But if he said no, an entire species might vanish forever. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The door slid open, and Sylvana stepped inside, her presence filling the room. "Forgive my intrusion," she said, her tone hesitant, "but I felt compelled to speak with you." Ryan gestured for her to sit, and she settled gracefully across from him. For a moment, they sat in silence, the hum of the ship the only sound. "I won't pressure you," Sylvana said finally, "but I need you to understand the depth of what we are asking. This is not just about survival. It is about hope, about preserving the light of a people who have known only darkness for so long." Ryan met her gaze, her sincerity cutting through his doubts. I don't know if I'm the right person for this." Sylvana reached out, her hand brushing his. The contact was electric, a warmth spreading through him that was both comforting and disconcerting. "You are," she said softly. "You were brought here for a reason, Ryan Hale. I can feel it." The air inside the Valyrian temple was electric, humming with energy that seemed to burrow under Ryan's skin and settle deep in his chest. Around him, the gathered Valyrians formed a circle, their glowing bioluminescent patterns creating an otherworldly dance of light in the dim chamber. This wasn't just a ritual. It was a desperate gamble for their survival. Sylvana stood before him, her ceremonial attire barely concealing the smooth, lavender skin beneath. The intricate designs of her glowing markings pulsed faintly, the rhythm matching the collective breaths of the crowd. Her golden eyes met Ryan's, unflinching and full of conviction. "Captain Hale," she said, her voice resonating through the chamber, "you stand at the threshold of a bond that will echo through the stars. By your courage, we may yet survive." Ryan's jaw tightened as her words sank in. He wasn't just a participant. He was about to cross into uncharted territory, becoming a bridge between species in a way no human had ever been. The weight of their hope pressed against him like a physical force. "I'm not sure anyone is ever ready for something like this," he admitted, his voice low but steady. "But I've made my choice." Sylvana inclined her head, respect evident in her gaze. "Then let us begin." Sylvana gestured for Ryan to step forward, leading him to the center of the chamber, where a raised platform glowed faintly with golden light. The surface was warm under his boots, radiating an energy that seemed to vibrate in harmony with his heartbeat. She moved with a grace that was almost hypnotic, the translucent fabric of her robes clinging to her body with every step. When she reached the platform, she turned to face him, her eyes softening. "This is not merely an act of necessity," she said. "It is a joining of two souls, a merging of essence and spirit." The chanting of the Valyrians grew louder, their melodic tones filling the chamber like a living pulse. Sylvana raised her arms, and the robes slipped from her shoulders, pooling around her feet. She stood before him, unashamed and radiant, her glowing markings casting ethereal patterns across her skin. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. He had seen beauty in countless forms across the galaxy, but Sylvana was something else entirely, a perfect blend of power and vulnerability, alien yet undeniably captivating. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his chest. The touch sent a spark through him, igniting a warmth that spread through his body. "Let your doubts fall away, Captain," she murmured. "Trust in the bond." As Sylvana began to guide him through the ritual, the platform's glow intensified, enveloping them in a cocoon of golden light. Her hands moved with deliberate care, peeling away the layers of his uniform until his skin met the charged air of the chamber. "You are stronger than you realize," she said, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "Your essence carries the resilience of your species, a fire that can reignite ours." Ryan's pulse quickened as her touch grew more intimate, each movement purposeful and reverent. He could feel the connection building between them, a bridge forming not just between their bodies, but their very minds. The platform beneath them pulsed in time with their shared energy, amplifying every sensation. Ryan's hands found her waist, the smooth warmth of her skin beneath his fingers igniting something primal within him. Their movements became synchronized, guided by an instinct neither of them fully understood, but both surrendered to. The chanting reached a crescendo, the energy in the room surging to its peak. Sylvana's body pressed against his, her glowing markings illuminating the space between them. Their connection was no longer just physical. It was a fusion of thought, emotion, and desire. Ryan's mind swam with visions, fragments of Sylvana's life, her memories of a thriving Vrath, her anguish as her people faded, and her unyielding hope for salvation. In return, she experienced his humanity, the struggles, the triumphs, the fierce determination to survive against all odds. The moment of culmination was unlike anything Ryan had ever known. It was raw and overwhelming, a flood of sensation that left him gasping for breath. The energy between them surged, filling the chamber with a blinding light as the ritual reached its climax. When the light finally dimmed, Ryan collapsed onto the platform, his body trembling. Sylvana knelt beside him, her golden eyes shimmering with gratitude and relief. "It is done," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have given us what we could not find on our own." As Ryan struggled to steady his breathing, he became acutely aware of the silence in the chamber. The valyrians stood motionless, their glowing markings brighter than before. Slowly, a ripple of joy spread through the crowd, their melodic voices rising in celebration. Sylvana helped Ryan to his feet, her touch gentle but firm. "You have done more than save us, Captain Hale," she said, her voice filled with quiet awe. "You have given us hope." Ryan met her gaze, the weight of what had just happened settling over him. He had stepped into the unknown and emerged changed, connected to these people in a way he could never have anticipated. But as the valyrians celebrated, a question lingered in the back of his mind. What would this bond mean for his future? The celebration inside the temple chamber was a living pulse of relief and hope. The valyrians' melodic voices rose in harmonious chants, their glowing markings flashing in rhythmic patterns that seemed to echo the renewed vitality coursing through their species. Ryan stood at the edge of the dais, his body still recovering from the overwhelming ritual. His chest rose and fell with deep breaths, but his mind was far from calm. Sylvana remained close to him, her presence grounding. The intensity of the ritual had left her visibly drained, yet she exuded a quiet strength. She placed a hand lightly on his forearm, drawing his attention. "Captain Hale," she said, her golden eyes locking with his. "Your courage will be remembered for generations. What you have given us cannot be repaid." Ryan shook his head slightly, his voice low. "It wasn't just courage. It was something else. That connection we shared, it was deeper than I expected." Sylvana smiled faintly, her bioluminescent markings glowing softly. "Such is the nature of the bond. It is both a gift and a burden. You now carry a part of us, just as we carry a part of you." Before Ryan could respond, the sound of heavy footfalls broke through the celebratory atmosphere. A group of valyrian elders entered the chamber, their expressions somber despite the joyous scene around them. Their leader, a towering figure with faded markings and an air of authority, approached the dais. "High Priestess Sylvana," the elder said, his voice deep and resonant. "We must speak. Now." Sylvana glanced at Ryan, her expression guarded. "Come," she said softly. This concerns you as much as it does me." They followed the elders into a smaller, more private chamber. The room was lined with ancient scrolls and glowing crystals, the air heavy with the scent of old parchment and ozone. The elder gestured for them to sit, but his tone carried no invitation as he began to speak. "The ritual has succeeded," he said, his gaze fixed on Sylvana. "Already, we feel the stirrings of renewal within our people, but there are complications." "What kind of complications?" Ryan asked, his instincts sharpening. The elder's golden eyes flicked to him, assessing. "The bond you have created with the High Priestess is stronger than anticipated. It has awakened something within her, a connection that runs deeper than we expected." Sylvana's expression tightened, but she said nothing. The elder continued. "This connection is not merely a sharing of essence. It has the potential to alter both of you, physically and emotionally. You may find yourselves tethered in ways neither of you fully understand." Ryan's pulse quickened. "Tethered? What does that mean?" "It means," the elder said gravely, "that your lives may now be linked. Her vitality is tied to yours, and yours to hers. If one of you suffers, so will the other." Sylvana finally spoke, her voice steady despite the revelation. This was not foretold in the prophecies. Why would the bond manifest in such a way? The elder's gaze softened. "Perhaps it is because the human's essence is more potent than we realized. Or perhaps it is the will of the cosmos. Whatever the reason, it is now a reality we must face." After the meeting, Ryan found himself alone in one of the temple's guest quarters, his thoughts racing. The room was sparse but comfortable, illuminated by the soft glow of glyphs etched into the walls. He paced the floor, replaying the elder's words in his mind. Tethered, the idea unsettled him. He had come to Vrath as a diplomat and a scientist, prepared to help in any way he could. But he hadn't anticipated this level of entanglement, this irreversible connection to a people he barely understood. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Sylvana entered, her presence commanding yet soothing. She closed the door behind her, her golden eyes searching his. "I wanted to see how you were," she said, her voice soft. Ryan stopped pacing and gestured for her to sit. "Honestly, I don't know how I feel. That whole tethered thing, it's a lot to take in." Sylvana nodded, her gaze steady. "It is unexpected, but it does not change what you have done for us. You have given my people a chance at survival. For that, I will always be grateful." Her words were sincere, but Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her visit. He sat across from her, leaning forward slightly. "What about you, Sylvana? How are you holding up?" Her expression faltered for a moment, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her face. "I feel different," she admitted. "The bond we share is unlike anything I have experienced before. It is overwhelming, yet comforting." Ryan studied her, noting the way her bioluminescent markings glowed faintly, as if responding to his presence. He felt it too, a strange, unspoken connection that pulsed between them like a second heartbeat. "It's not just physical," he said quietly. "There's something deeper, something we can't explain." Sylvana met his gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps some things are not meant to be explained. Perhaps they are simply meant to be felt." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ryan leaned back, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. Whatever this bond was, it was clear that it had changed both of them, and there was no turning back. The celebration of renewal was short-lived. By the next morning, the temple was abuzz with tension. Ryan awoke to the faint vibrations of hurried footsteps outside his quarters and voices raised in terse whispers. The soft glow of the glyphs on the wall seemed dimmer, as if reflecting the unease that had settled over the Valyrians. A sharp knock at his door jolted him upright. Sylvana entered without waiting for a response, her golden eyes filled with urgency. "Captain Hale," she said, her voice low but insistent. "We have a problem." Ryan rubbed the sleep from his eyes, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "What kind of problem?" "Follow me." Sylvana led Ryan through the winding corridors of the temple, her pace brisk. When they reached the central council chamber, a group of Valyrian leaders was already gathered, their glowing markings flickering erratically, a sign of their heightened anxiety. Among them stood several armed warriors, their sleek weapons humming faintly. "What's going on?" Ryan asked, his voice cutting through the tension. One of the elders stepped forward, his expression grim. "A faction within our people, the Purists, has risen against us. They believe the ritual was a desecration of our traditions, and that involving an outsider in our renewal is an unforgivable betrayal." Ryan frowned. "A civil war? Here? No." Sylvana nodded. The Purists were a small, dormant faction, but the success of the ritual seems to have emboldened them. They view the bond we share as unnatural, an affront to what they believe defines us as Valyrians. They'd rather see your species die out than accept help. Ryan asked incredulously. "Fanaticism blinds reason," Sylvana replied, "and they are determined to destroy what we have achieved." The situation escalated quickly. Scouts reported that the Purists had taken control of key structures within the city ruins surrounding the temple. They were mobilizing for an attack, intent on seizing the genetic vault and erasing all evidence of the ritual's success. Ryan stood with Sylvana and the council, studying a holographic map of the city. "What's their advantage?" he asked. "They know the terrain better than anyone," said one of the warriors, "and they have technology that rivals ours." Ryan's brow furrowed. "Then we even the odds. You said I carry a part of you now, right? Use that. This bond, whatever it is, might give us an edge." Sylvana hesitated, her eyes searching his. "You're suggesting we weaponize the connection." "I'm suggesting we use it to survive," Ryan said firmly. "If they're willing to destroy everything to prove a point, we don't have the luxury of playing nice." The council murmured among themselves, weighing Ryan's words. Finally, Sylvana nodded. "We'll do what we must." The Purists struck at dusk, their forces swarming the outer defenses of the temple. The air filled with the crackle of energy weapons and the distant hum of ships descending into the ruins. Ryan, armed with a valyrian blade and flanked by warriors, found himself in the thick of the fight. Sylvana fought alongside him, her movements swift and precise. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed with a bright intensity, reflecting the energy coursing through her body. Ryan couldn't help but notice that their movements seemed synchronized, as if the bond they shared extended beyond the mental and into the physical. At one point, a Purist soldier lunged at Ryan with a spear-like weapon. Before he could react, Sylvana intercepted the blow, her blade slicing through the attacker with a deadly elegance. She turned to Ryan, her golden eyes blazing. "Stay close to me," she commanded. "We are stronger together." The tide of battle shifted when Sylvana and Ryan led a small team into the heart of the Purist stronghold. Using the bond, Sylvana was able to sense the enemy's movements, guiding them with an uncanny precision. Ryan, for his part, felt an almost supernatural awareness of the battlefield, his reactions faster and sharper than ever before. They reached the control room of the Purist base, where their leader, a towering Valyrian with jagged markings and a cold glare, awaited them. His voice was venomous as he addressed Sylvana. "You have betrayed everything we stand for," he snarled. "You let an outsider defile our sacred traditions." Sylvana stepped forward, her blade at the ready. "You cling to a past that has already failed us. We cannot survive without change." The Purist leader lunged, and the room erupted into chaos. The fight was brutal, but it ended with Sylvana standing victorious, her blade at the enemy's throat. "This ends now," she said, her voice steel. "Your hatred has no place in our future." The Purists' defeat brought an uneasy peace. The city was reclaimed, and the genetic vault remained intact. Yet, as the Valyrians celebrated, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that the cost of their victory was higher than they realized. He sat with Sylvana in the quiet aftermath, the glow of the temple softening the edges of their exhaustion. "We won," he said, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. Sylvana nodded, her expression somber. "But the fractures within our people remain. The Purists may have been defeated, but their ideology will linger. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, the connection between them flaring briefly. Then we'll face it together. Whatever comes next, I'm with you. Sylvana smiled faintly, her golden eyes reflecting both gratitude and determination. And I with you, Ryan Hale. Our bond has made us stronger than we could have imagined. Together, we will rebuild. The fires of the battle had been extinguished, leaving behind a city cloaked in eerie silence. The victory had been hard-won, but the cost weighed heavily on everyone. Ryan stood on the temple's observation balcony, staring out at the ruins of Vrath. The jagged spires of the city seemed to glow faintly under the planet's twin moons, casting long shadows that mirrored the unease in his mind. Sylvana approached, her footsteps soft against the polished stone. She stopped beside him, the faint glow of her bioluminescent markings catching his attention. "You should rest," she said, her tone gentle but firm. Ryan shook his head, his eyes never leaving the horizon. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see the battle, the people we lost." "We all carry those memories," Sylvana said, her voice laced with sadness. "But dwelling on them will not bring them back." Ryan finally turned to face her. "And what about the bond? The elders said it would tie us together physically, emotionally. I felt it, Sylvana. During the battle, it was like I knew what you were feeling, where you were, even what you were thinking. What does it mean for us?" Sylvana hesitated, her golden eyes searching his. "I do not know," she admitted. "This bond is unlike any we have experienced before. It goes beyond our understanding of the ritual. But what I do know is that it has made us stronger." Ryan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Stronger, sure. But it's not just strength, is it? It's something deeper." Sylvana stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "It is. And perhaps that is what frightens you." Ryan's heart pounded as her words struck a chord. The bond they shared wasn't just a product of the ritual. It was something profound, something that transcended their differences. He could feel her emotions now, a mix of uncertainty and longing that mirrored his own. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sylvana reached out, her hand brushing against his. The contact sent a jolt through him, the connection between them flaring to life. "We move forward," she said softly. "Together." The days that followed were filled with rebuilding. The Valyrians worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the Purist's attack, their renewed vitality a testament to the success of the ritual. Ryan found himself at the center of it all, his bond with Sylvana making him an integral part of their efforts. But with each passing day, the connection between them grew stronger. It was more than just a mental or emotional link. It was a tether that bound them on a level neither fully understood. They could sense each other's presence, feel each other's emotions, even share fleeting thoughts. One evening, as they walked through the partially restored city, Ryan turned to Sylvana. "This bond, it's changing me. I can feel it. My body, my mind. It's like I'm becoming something else." Sylvana stopped, her golden eyes meeting his. "You are becoming a part of us, Ryan, and we are becoming a part of you. It is the nature of the bond." Ryan nodded slowly, his thoughts a whirlwind. "And you? What about you?" Sylvana smiled faintly. "I am not the same as I was before the ritual, but I do not see this as a loss. I see it as an evolution." That night, in the quiet of the temple, Ryan found Sylvana in the Hall of Ascension. She stood alone, her glowing markings casting soft patterns on the walls as she stared at the ancient carvings that told the story of her people. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice breaking the silence. Sylvana turned to him, her expression softening. "No, too much to think about." Ryan approached her, the weight of their bond evident in the air between them. "I've been thinking too. About us." Sylvana tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What about us?" Ryan hesitated, searching for the right words. "This bond, it's not just some side effect of the ritual. It's something real, something that's changed us both. And I don't think I can walk away from that." Sylvana stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "Nor can I." The distance between them disappeared, and for a moment, the weight of their shared burdens vanished. They were no longer the high priestess and the outsider, no longer the savior and the saved. They were simply two beings, connected by something far greater than themselves. Sylvana reached up, her hand resting against Ryan's cheek. Whatever the future holds, we face it together. Ryan covered her hand with his voice steady. Together,